Welcome to another edition of Real Bigfoot Encounters with Reverend Jeff. This week's story comes to us from deep within the wilds of the vast North Florida Ocala National Forest. A young hiker attempting to cross the entire forest has a run-in with a creature unlike anything he's ever heard of before. Could this be the Bigfoot of legends? Let's hear his story and find out. My name is John C., and I was an avid hiker. I lived near the ocean in New Smyrna Beach, Florida, and in the spring of my 18th birthday I decided to hike across Florida, just me and my chihuahua Paco, a hiking pack and enough gear to make us comfy each night. Our first few days out were pretty normal. We hiked from park to park, set up a hammock overnight, and moved on the next day. No one even noticed we were there. It was about the fifth day when we arrived at the edge of the Ocala National Forest. I had ordered maps of the park long before I ventured out from home, as I knew people had gotten lost, never to be seen again over the decades in the park. We'd been packing in along Route 44, which led from the East Coast basically right into the West Coast along that route, and it cut right through the middle of the forest for many miles. I figured we'd be in the park for at least 4 nights before crossing the nearly 70 miles of dense, really unforgiving territory, but this wasn't our first rodeo. Paco and I made a short distance into the forest that day, so we posted up near a trail in the afternoon. I figured we could get some good rest and push off early the next day, hoping to cover 15 miles. I set up my hammock and started a small campfire, cooked up some Chef Boyardee for me and Paco. Yeah, I know it's bad for us, but I only brought a few cans to enjoy. The rest was dry dog food and MRE packs. Oh joy. Well, we sat along a log a lot that I drug over near the fire pit. We ate up like it was steak fillets. The night was so quiet it was kind of spooky. But what was there to fear? I had my fearless Paco at my side. I let the fire die down and I picked up Paco and we settled into the hammock for some sleep. I was awakened to a strange noise at about 3 in the morning. I swear it sounded like a tree was falling or something was grunting while tearing up in the brush about 30 yards outside of our camp. We couldn't see what was there, but could have been anything from a bear to a wild boar. At this point, maybe even a panther. Soon after, though, everything was quiet again. My nerves settled, but we went back to sleep. I awoke to a beautiful day. The birds were singing, the wind was blowing, so I packed us up and away we went. I decided to walk out past the area that the noise had come from that night, and I discovered the strangest thing. A tree twisted and broken, but not at the ground, nearly 5 feet up the trunk. It surely didn't look natural, and all the grass around the tree looked as if a football team had been running blocking drills around it for hours, just all smashed down. I decided it'd be best to move on as the daylight was burning, and the further I got from this, the better I'd feel about it. I took a route that led us past Alexander Springs and led over towards Buck Lake, hoping they'd be able to fish that night when we arrived. Sadly, some weather moved in and late in the afternoon, so I set up a tarp and hung the hammock to wait out the storm deep off trail in a place one would hope not to be found. The rain set in, the wind picked up, the darkness soon set. There was no hope for a fire, everything was just too wet. Just about 9 o'clock the rain finally stopped, but the clouds were so thick and the forest was cloaked in a darkness that your eyes just couldn't pierce. Paco was shivering, and for that matter so was I, and I could feel something just wasn't right. Something out there. I knew it for sure. I could hear it, huffing and puffing in the darkness as it seemed to pace around our spot. Paco let out a loud bark and, for whatever reason, whatever it was, snorted back, and then it seemed to bark right back at Paco in a far deeper tone. Paco pulled back in fear for a moment, and then he lost his ever-loving mind. Paco jumped from my arms and charged off into the darkness, barking and snarling like nothing I'd ever seen him do before. He was quickly out of my sight and seemingly lost in the darkness without me. My heart sank into the pit of my guts when I heard him whimper and yelp in pain from the darkness, and that's when I lost it too. I picked up a large branch in one hand and grabbed my bowie knife in the other, and out I went screaming into the woods where I had heard my best friend. One moment I'm He-Man, and the very next moment I was as terrified as I'd never been before. Right in front of me stood a hair-covered giant, as dark as the night, snarling and whooping at me like a rabid dog on a fresh kill. Just to his side was Paco. He was laying in a heap near a root ball of a fallen down tree. and I charged at the beast with everything I had. I swung the branch as hard as I could, but the monster just swatted it away like it was nothing to fear. The branch went flying from my hand, and the pain stung deep into my palm, as if I just struck a mailbox filled with concrete with a baseball bat. So I lurched forward with the Bowie knife, and the blade struck his arm as he went to defend, and the blade pierced it, and he jerked back and shrieked in pain and then anger. It charged at me, knocking me to the ground at what seemed like its waist. It was so tall, and I smacked my head on a tree root and passed out for a bit. The next thing I knew, I awoke. 10 hours had passed. It was morning again, and there by my side was Paco, keeping me warm and very much alive. When I stirred, he woke up, wagged his tail, and slowly stood up. He yelped in pain for a moment as I started to rise. I felt faint at first, but my strength returned. I took a quick look around and found giant footprints all around the area and what looked like some kind of nest made out of pine boughs. Could it be that we just happened to hunker down on its den? Could my luck really be that horrible? I quickly gathered up what gear I could find, and I showed Paco the fastest way out to the road. I'd immediately flagged down the first car I saw, and I begged him to take us to the ranger station. The poor lady that stopped was grossed out by my looks. I hadn't realized I had a head wound, and half of my head was covered in blood. Nancy was her name. She quietly asked me what happened. What was I supposed to say? The truth? No way. So I told her I was intact in my camp while I slept, but I never saw who did it. The ranger station was about 20 minutes away, and we arrived pretty quickly, as I think she was afraid of me, because the moment I stepped out of the truck and grabbed my pack, she peeled off in her truck without looking back. I stepped up to the ranger station, and when I got to the front door, I caught a glimpse of the shape I was in and realized that had what scared Nancy so badly. The ranger on duty noticed me and came to the door. He rushed over, opened it, let Paco and I inside. He grabbed my pack as I made my way over to the bench, and he called for an ambulance and a local county sheriff right away. He then asked what happened, and I actually told him the truth. His eyes got as wide as saucers as I let the details unfold to him, so much so that at one point he pointed out and said, "I knew it," to which I asked, of course, what the hell do you mean? He said, "I knew Bigfoot was real. That's what you ran into. Where exactly did it happen?" Ranger Tom brought over a map, and I circled the spot as close of a guess as I could make. He then folded up the map and put it in his coat pocket before anyone arrived. Ranger Tom told me frankly that while I should tell the truth that I had been attacked, it would be wise to just claim it happened while you slept. You didn't see who did it like you did with Nancy. I thought to myself, that's what I should have told Ranger Tom, too. Well, the medic arrived and he cleaned up my wound. He asked what happened, and I gave him the same story I told Nancy, and Ranger Tom said that was the story that I had told him as well. It turned out my wound wasn't all that bad. I didn't need to go to the hospital. The deputy sheriff showed up next, and after talking to Ranger Tom and Medic Pete, he came over and asked me to tell him what happened. For just a moment, just that fleeting microsecond, I wanted to blurt out, "I was attacked by Bigfoot, you schmuck," but I gave him the short version as well. They called for my uncle to drive out from the beach to pick me up, and about an hour later, Uncle Matt was there. He loaded my gear into the trunk of his car and put Paco into the back seat. He helped me out to the car, never asked why I didn't call my father. We rode halfway home in silence, and I was the one that started to talk. I started out with, "Well, you won't believe this story, but it is the truth." I recounted the events to him the best I could manage to recall, and Uncle Matt only asked one thing of me. He says I need a description of the beast. I told him it was nearly 7 feet tall, very wide at the shoulders with a head that set deep on top with no neck. It narrowed at the waist like a bodybuilder, which led to big, powerful legs with strange proportions to the knees. The arms seemed to be super strange as well, as if the bone from the shoulder to the elbow was a good 1/3 longer than it should be, making it swing low on the body close to that odd knee. Hair so black it seemed to disappear into the night, long arms, and then shorter at the hips. Yet what I remember most is the face, which is the last thing I saw as I fell to the ground as it charged me. A cone-shaped head, deep, wide-set eyes, pure black, and had a hint of brown around the iris. A big rounded nose and low-slung jaw with what seemed to be was on a hinge as it was screaming. It opened so widely I could smell its foul breath. "Is that enough?" I asked, to which he replied, "Yes. Boy, that's quite enough. I believe you. Anyone with such a story had better have gotten a good look at whatever knocked him to the ground. I know there's creatures out there we haven't seen in modern times, that there's all the same the Seminole legends go back a couple of 100 years. You just had the worst luck hunkering down near its den. I'm just glad the two of you were okay. Uncle Matt agreed with me that my parents should get the short story, and my mother will worry to death anytime I leave the house. I fell down. I landed on Paco. We got help. The end. That was the story I told for years to protect myself from ridicule. Well, no more will I hide. It happened to me. It could happen to you. I no longer hike in the woods. This poor guy had the bad luck of claiming territory that wasn't his. His brush with the monster nearly ended his days with another real Bigfoot encounter. Thanks for watching. I'm Reverend Jeff. May the Squatch be with you.